You suffer from anxiety, from depression, maybe even chronic pain? Well, listen up. Truth Be Told is going to tell you about a breakthrough program built on over 100 years of therapies used in America's returning veterans to help you successfully overcome PTSD, anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. The secret proven in study after study. Music therapy. The effects of music are nothing short of amazing. From strokes to PTSD, music has been shown to improve the quality of life. Now, one of the latest music therapy programs being used in America's veteran hospitals can be yours to experience for free at home and to help your own anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. Or just relax after a hard day. It's called Whole Tones. It takes music therapy to a new level. This revolutionary program makes use of specifically designed frequencies that have been shown to stimulate your body's natural healing power down to a cellular level. If it works for battle-scarred vets, can it work for you? Well, experience it for yourself for free at sweetwholetones.com. Like Tony Sweet, that's SWEET. Go to sweetwholetones.com. Now enjoy the show. Do you suffer?
What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm your host, Tony Sweet.
And I'm Eddie Connor. Now, we all know that Halloween is all over, but we also know that spirits don't celebrate holidays.
That's right, Eddie. And today we have author Father Mike Driscoll on the show, and he is an expert on exorcisms and demonic possessions. It's going to be a deep topic today.
Are you scared that he's going to do a demonic exorcism
Yes,
on you,
I
Tony? Father Mike Driscoll's book on mental disorders, demonic possession, and exorcism is titled Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment. Now, he also has published a second book on short stories titled The Father Capranica Mysteries, Stories of the Strange and Supernatural. He says the latter book was inspired by the persona and music of Alice Cooper.
Eddie, I'm curious, what is exorcism?
I think an exorcism is the religious or even the spiritual practice, I would say, of purportedly evicting demons or other negative spiritual entities from a person or an area that's believed to be possessed.
Well, Eddie, I'm also curious to see if what we see in the movies are even close to what Father Mike has seen in reality.
Ooh, it could be scary, or you never know. So if you want to learn more about Father Mike, visit his website, peterandchains.com. But of course, Tony and I want you to stick around, everybody, because Father Mike Driscoll is going to be speaking candidly about exorcisms and demonic possessions. So please welcome to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie, Father Mike Driscoll.
Oh, yes. I told you the crowd's going to go crazy. How you doing,
Wow,
Father Mike?
That's great. Good evening. Thanks for having me. Thanks to all those in the crowd there.
Well, thank you so much. And this is going to be a great show. I've always wanted to do a show on exorcism and just never found the right person. And when I came across your book, I thought this is going to be good. And I'm glad you accepted the invitation. And I want to get right into it. So tell us little bit about your background, where you're from, and how you got into the priesthood, actually.
Well, I'm from Peoria, Illinois, and went to the University of Illinois majoring in economics. But by the time I was finishing school, started thinking about the seminary. So thanks be to God, I had a good Catholic parents, and something I didn't really think about much growing up. But by the time I was getting towards the end of college, the idea came and wouldn't go away. So I thought, well, maybe that idea is coming from God. So went on to the seminary and eventually ordained a priest in 1992 when I was 30 years old. And then served in several parishes, and then the bishop had me become a hospital chaplain.
Oh.
And so that's when I went back to school to get a degree in counseling, got a master's, and then went on for the PhD in counseling. And I don't know if you want to get into this part yet, but what my interest in this topic, at the same time, I knew a priest who had a psychology background. He was in another state. But he had been consulted, and the bishop ended up having him do a couple of exorcisms. You have to be authorized by your bishop if you're a Catholic priest. And so I talked to him and said, well, what made you think that was, because I'm studying mental illnesses here. Why would you think a person is possessed? So we talked about that, and when the time came, I had to think of a topic for a dissertation. I proposed that and found a few of the instructors that were willing to be my dissertation committee to look at that topic. So my dissertation was called How Do Catholic Exorcists Distinguish Between Demon Possession and Mental Disorders? So the dissertation was heavier on the mental health aspect because it was, it's a mental health degree. And then the book still includes that, but the book is more on the theology, as you say.
Well,
but it still has mental health aspects too, of course.
And the Catholic Church has, most of us of a certain age, knew of the movie Exorcist and the priest that did the exorcism. That's how we learned really a lot about exorcism in Catholic Church. Can you give us a little history of the background with the Catholic Church and exorcisms?
Sure. Well, that goes back to, you read the Gospels, and if you take those as gospel truth, that those things really, Jesus really said and did what we see there. You see him doing a number of exorcisms, driving out demons. A couple differences with Jesus and the rest of us. He knows, he knows if someone's possessed or not. For the rest of us human beings, it's a little trickier to determine whether they're possessed. Jesus gives the word and the demons leave. For exorcists, it might be repeatedly doing the rite of exorcism. But nevertheless, that's where it started. And I've got in front of me the rite of exorcism in case you need to quote it a couple times tonight. And that was published in 1614. If you think about it historically, that's not too long after the printing press was invented, about 100 years. Right. So before that, there was no printing press. So the rite was more handed down by verbal, tradition. And so even though it was printed up in 1614. It goes in direct line back to what Jesus did, and you see that in the rite when the priest is saying in the name of Jesus Christ I command you,
right,
calling the demon a murderer and a liar as Jesus did. So those kind of things. But so that's how that rite developed, and starting with what Jesus did, and the rules, as I mentioned, that a Catholic priest needs his bishop's authorization in order to do an exorcism. That was not always the case, but let's say by the Middle Ages, there were, sometimes there's one exorcist at kind of a circus atmosphere, and so the church to get into tighter control and not just have anyone or any priest without, a check and balance, just any priest going out and doing exorcism. That the rule eventually was made that, hey, you need to have your bishop's approval. We don't want just anyone or any priest without some degree of accountability, just claiming he's doing an exorcism, because I meet people, my hospital has a mental health unit. Well, if I meet someone who's got some mental disorders and they say that, they're hearing demons, I don't want to meet them and say, oh my gosh, I bet you're possessed. Well, that'd be the worst thing for them, They're very worried about that. Instead, we have a conversation. Oh, well, let's say a prayer and I sprinkle holy water in case it is something from the devil. But hey, what, have you seen your doctor and you talked to a counselor? How's it going with that? So you cover both bases.
Wow. So let's, if you don't mind, Father Mike, will you take us back to when you were a chaplain at the hospital, and what was one of the more profound experiences you had there in differentiating between mental health disorders and possible demons?
I've not seen anything that I thought was inherently, I've never seen a person I considered possessed. I've seen a few people that others thought might have been possessed, but I need more than just personally. I want to see something that cannot be explained by natural means, and I've not seen that. No, I have talked to some people, let's say with schizophrenia, and they might say that they're hearing demons telling them to do things, or seeing demons, or having nightmares about demons. I'm not going to immediately presume that is the case, but I'm also not going to immediately presume that's not the case, because suppose you are the devil and you're really cruel. Who do you want to pick on? Hey, I think I'll pick on a person who no one's going to believe anyway and roll their eyes at. So yeah, the devil's really cruel, and that's who we might well pick on. So there have been a couple times where I prayed with people and sprinkled holy water and did that. And then like one person I'm remembering saying about nightmares with demons, they said, after that, I said, well, I'm not having those nightmares anymore. So was it partly, demonic as well as mental disorder? It could have been. That does not constitute full possession. If you want to now or later, I can tell you about the signs of what. There's a difference between maybe some kind of more subtle demon attack versus possession. The most subtle demon attack is temptation. The devil just giving you bad ideas, just like a bad friend saying, "Hey, let's go do this," and you know it's wrong and getting tempted to do it. So that's the most subtle and the devil's
Wow.
way of working.
And that would be that subtlety you're referring to have a temptation. That can be anything that is something you personally believe is bad for you, right?
Right. Yeah, we'd say temptations to violate God's law. Look at the book of Genesis, and there it is. This the serpent, this little whispering voice, whispering to Eve, "Go ahead, do it," even though she knew it was against God's law. She well, it looks like the devil's saying, "Oh, it'll be good," So that's how he works. And not that the devil is the only source of temptation. The Catholic Church kind of says that the devil, the world, and the flesh. So in other words, the sins of the flesh, these sins against adultery and those kind of things, substance abuse, sins of the temptations of the world. Those would be things like materialism and power. You could look at it, things from the outside. Those would be one source of temptation. Those from within, our body, we have temptations. And then the third source is the devil. I picture him as that serpent in the background, just whispering, egging us on to give in to temptation.
Wow.
What is
I think that is by far his most common way of working. The possession, I think, is extremely rare.
I want to go back to whenever you're speaking about working with certain people and you have a prayer with them and you pray with them, and then sometimes you use the holy water, and then after that, let's say the nightmares go away or their bad thoughts go away. How much of what you do with, I'll say, clients and the people that you do healings with, how much of it is their belief system about certain things versus a genuine negative force behind them, in your opinion?
Are you saying how much is a placebo effect?
Yes.
Yeah, which for the listeners, I'm probably a pretty common term, but in other words, how much of it is the person thinking, if I can just just a thought? Is it all in a person's head? Is both the bad feeling in their head, and then is the priest came and sprinkled water,
Yes.
holy water, now I'm better. How
Yeah.
much is all in their head? At some point, it's impossible to say. A placebo effect is an interesting thing. On studies of new medicines and stuff, there are a handful of people that respond, and the placebo, which is just in that sense a sugar pill, seems to work. So that's kind of a mysterious thing in itself. But because I don't know. That's why I want to make sure I cover the bases, like I said, spiritually, and then I also, I'm a counselor myself, but I'm also, you've got a counselor and you've got a psychiatrist. We'll make sure you talk to them and get the help you need there too. Given a comparison, I'm a hospital chaplain, so I'm visiting people with physical illnesses all day too. Well, I'm also praying for them. I'm not telling them ignore the doctor. No, do what the doctors and nurses tell you, and hey, we'll say a prayer and ask God's help too. So again, it's taking kind of holistic, you could say, approach.
Which I think is the healthiest approach. And when you stand back and look at it, whether it's from a non-physical perspective or this human perspective, I think it's smart to cross your T's and dot your I's and come from it with your whole heart and mind.
Well, right, and here's a way to look at it too. Going to see a counselor, what does the counselor do? A person goes in and have a conversation, they leave, and they might be doing better. So that it's kind of proof. If anyone believes that counseling can help, it's proof that we are more than just a collection of molecules, of chemicals. If that was the case, we'd only use medicine. But we do recognize the value of counseling. What is that? Meaning having a person say some things that might make me feel better. If you boil it down to what counseling is, someone who I get to say some things and they say some things, and at the end of it, I might be feeling better.
Well, and what you're doing is giving them a different perspective for sure, and you're holding a space for them that's lighter and brighter and more healing than what they can hold for themselves in the moment. And I think that's an alchemic thing with the molecules and atoms too. It literally causes you to feel lighter and to metamorphose from a more negative cloud that's around the client, and then they start feeling brighter and lighter.
So I want to ask you. You were talking about how the Catholic Church has to approve an exorcism, and nowadays it seems like there's so many people that with technology and how do you actually determine if the exorcism should go ahead, and who actually does make that decision? Because there's a lot of people that could just believe that they're possessed, and I mean, when do you finally know a 100% sure to go to whoever to say, can we get a possession or a exorcism on this person?
Here, one exorcist I talked to said his name is kind of out there, where at least in the state where he lives, as his name is kind of out there as an exorcist, and he's telling me he gets several people per day, 3 or 4 every single day,
wow,
either on the phone or coming to see, in person, thinking that they are possessed or that their family member or friend is possessed. And I said, "You're talking over 1,000 a year?" And he said, "Oh yeah,
wow,
3 or 4 people every day." I said, "Really?" And so these people believe that. I said that they are possessed or someone they know is. I said, "Okay, so of those, how many do you end up doing an exorcism? Going through the determining if they are possessed and do an exorcism?" And he said, "Oh, maybe 1 or 2." I said, "Oh, really?" So that's how rare it is. That if you were to get maybe this, I know it's not a scientific study, but give an idea that this guy has been doing this for a few, 5 or 10 years, this priest. He might talk to 1,000 people in a year and determine that maybe 1 or 2 are actually possessed. So it shows how rare it is, even for people who think they are. Now, there could be, again, some lower level demonic thing going on.
right.
And maybe at this point, if you want, I can, like I said, I've got the writer's exorcism in front of me. I can tell you the signs. There are 3 signs the rite of exorcism tells. Would you like me to
Yes,
That
please.
would
those
be-
right now?
Yes,
That would be great.
Yeah.
Well, and now here's something interesting. As I mentioned, the rite was handed down in oral tradition and eventually printed in 1614. They might think, oh, back then, boy, the church was probably backward and foolish. Not at all. Here's what the rite says. And again, this is from the 1600s. The exorcist should not believe too readily that a person is possessed by an evil spirit, but the exorcist ought to ascertain the signs by which a person possessed can be distinguished from one who is suffering from melancholy or some other illness. Melancholy would have been a catch-all for mental illness. So in other words, 1614, the church is already telling us just don't believe this too quickly. If you try and determine it, distinguish it from mental illnesses. And then here are the 3 signs it gives. Signs are possession of the following: ability to speak with some facility in a strange tongue or to understand it when spoken by another. So there's number 1. I'm not an exorcist, by the way. I should have mentioned that right off the bat. I've assisted a few times. And if the person, starts responding, let's say the one exorcist was able to speak a few languages, and he might say something in Greek. Well, the devil should know Greek as well as he knows English, as well as he knows every other language.
Mm-hmm.
So if the person responds in a language that they should not know, that can be a sign of possession. You got to be careful to make sure the person didn't have some background in that language. So there's one sign. Second sign, the rite says, the faculty of divulging future and hidden events.
Ooh.
That can be the most powerful. Suppose the person, it tells the priest something about his background, that he's never met this person. There's no way they could know something he did or something happened to him 10 years ago. That can be a very clear sign something's going on here, that's unnatural. And the third one is a display of powers beyond the subject's age and natural condition. Exorcists say that's usually great strength, although a couple of them say that they've not seen, but they've been told by other exorcists they've seen an actual levitation. That must be extremely rare because the exorcists I talked to have never seen that. But this one can be tricky. If a person shows great strength, well, talk to any doctor or nurse who's worked in an emergency room for a while, or anyone who's like me in a place where you've got a mental health unit.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sad and very surprising to see how a person, even a small person who is not in the right mind and doesn't care if they hurt themselves or someone else, it's surprising how many bigger people can take to hold down a small person like that. Yeah. So we don't want to look at that and say, oh, look at that, they're possessed. No, the poor person might just, be having a severe mental health crisis at the moment.
Right.
So that can be tricky. So you look at those 3 signs. Another sign that's not mentioned right there, but kind of throughout the rite, and we're all familiar with this one, is a kind of a negative reaction to the sacred. So the person might respond, scream or shout or spit or whatever when they hear certain prayers or when they're sprinkled with holy water. It may really cause some physical reaction to redness or swelling or something like that. But you want to be careful on the sign of just the person reacting, because as I mentioned, the exorcist so many people come to him. If you get someone who comes to you and they think they're possessed, and you say, well, here, let me throw holy water on you, well, they may well react because they think they're possessed. That, you know, so that sign is kind of like to top it off, but that one alone isn't going to usually tell you much. Unless there's some kind of physical thing, like I said, if you sprinkle holy water on a person showing some physical signs of, you know, swelling or redness or something that can happen like that, that may be pretty clear sign too. Usually the exorcists are looking for more than just one thing happening.
Right, I would say so. I hope so.
Do you know? Yeah. Do you have any of your colleagues that have pretended to use holy water or some holy thing on someone who thought they were possessed, and then it was just like regular tap water or
Gatorade or something?
And then they thought it was real, even though it wasn't.
They might do something like that. Yeah, you saw that. You can see that in the movie The Exorcist, where the priest, the girl, which is a weird part of the movie because in the movie she was supposed to really be possessed. But anyway, she reacted, and later on the priest told the mother it was just tap water. I never blessed it. So, the exorcist might try something like that, you know. Some little tricks like that just to see if there's a reaction. So they might try some things like that. Yeah.
Smart. It's smart to do that. I have a weird question because of what I do for a living, Father Mike. And Teresa Caputo, she's also known around the world as the Long Island Medium.
Okay.
She's a Catholic, and she's a great medium in that she receives messages from the other side. And of course, no psychic, no medium is ever 100% accurate. But she was talking in whenever I went to see her recently, and they say, if you're Catholic and the Catholic Church doesn't believe in what you do, why do you stay there, and why do you keep giving them money every single week? And she's like, well, because my heart is one with God, and that's how I was raised. And if there's certain people who don't understand what I do, that's on them. It has nothing to do with me. And she's like, now they keep cashing my checks every week. But her heart, I feel, is in the right place, which leads me to this. The second thing in the list of 3 is about the possible predictions or aspects of psychic phenomenon. Where does the Catholic Church stand on people like me, in your opinion, who I'm a soul intuitive. I've been doing intuitive readings for 25 years. That's what I've been doing for a living for 25 years. So where does that fall under the umbrella of what you do for a living and what you do as the chaplain? How does that all come together so that I can understand your perspective?
I can give you the Catholic Church perspective on that. These signs, by the way, because this fits in with what you're saying, are, if you think about it, they're a mockery of things that God does. So speaking in a language, we're able to understand it when spoken a strange language. Remember, and if you know the Bible very well, in the Acts of the Apostles, the Feast of Pentecost, shortly after Jesus went up into heaven, the Holy Spirit came on the apostles, and they were able to start speaking languages that all these different people, from different nations understood them in their own language. So there's the devil mocking that. Display of powers or the hidden events. That would be a mockery of what the prophets were able to do. Jesus enlightened the prophets. In the Old Testament especially, we call them prophets. And sometimes, there have been great saints who have had that gift too. So can God do that? Sure. I'm not sure. I don't know that person, so it's nothing personal about her. So she's communicating with the dead. I mean, in the Catholic Church, we say, yeah, we can communicate with the dead. We call that prayer. We pray for the souls, that we believe if souls are still on their way to heaven, they can use our prayers. The saints in heaven, we believe, keep praying for us. So we don't need to go to this kind of this spooky angle and say, okay, I'm going to get in touch in some other way with them. So I understand. I guess I would disagree with her in a couple of ways. I think I understand what she thinks she's doing. We disagree on what's really happening there. I don't believe that the souls on the way to heaven or the souls in heaven or the angels or God are going to speak in some kind of creepy, spooky way, but maybe that's not what she's doing. I'm not sure what she says she's doing as a medium.
Yeah,
I don't know why she's doing anything other than praying.
That is what she's doing, actually, and she's very adamant about that. And I've seen her myself. It is a form of prayer. A thought is a form of prayer. Asking with your mouth or your thoughts or your heart or your energy is a form of prayer. So
is she getting she's getting messages? Is that what you're saying?
She is receiving information, and it's information that literally no one could know but the person she's speaking to in front of them. And again, I want to, and I'm not taking a side on this. I'm really more curious in what your opinion is, your perspective on the Catholic Church. And as you being a chaplain, I'm also really interested in your perspective with it too, of course.
Well, I'm not sure if I understand the question, because my perspective is what I was just saying, that I, without seeing the detail or whatever, it's hard for me to. A few blocks from where I live, there's a psychic place on the corner, and it's advertised $10. I know I don't believe God is going to work through a psychic. I don't believe he's going to, for $10, he's going to start giving the psychic information. If he or she seems to have some knowledge that there's no way they could have known, yeah, I think it's probably the devil messing with them. I think most of the time those are whatever. We're talking about a placebo effect. A lot of times I think it's just kind of telling people what they want to hear. There, those times when it is something more concrete and unnatural. Again, in my beliefs, I don't know why God or an angel or saints would work through those kind of means. They're pretty clearly forbidden in the Old Testament and were never used by, Jesus or the saints. We don't see them working that way. So that's just not part of the Christian tradition that I see.
But it was that Tony and I are nodding our heads back and forth. Meaning we think it's fair. Your answer is lovely and it's fair and it's true.
Yeah, I think clearly we're just one of these areas where we disagree. So that's fine.
So it was.
I'm not saying. I hope I'm not saying anything personal about anything.
Oh
no, we don't. Listen, this show.
And different.
In this show, that's why it's called Truth Be Told, because we all, and where an experience becomes truth is we want people to listen to our shows, listen to our experts, and get the conversation going, and then they can go and research and find out for themselves what their truth is, and this is why we have people like yourself on.
Yeah, what their truth is in their heart, their God self, their core essence, their spirit, their soul, their feelings, their emotions, of course.
And you're great. I love what we're talking about.
I do too. And was Christ a prophet? Was Christ intuitive? Was Christ a psychic?
I would never use the word psychic for him, but I would kind of give him 3 titles, kind of an old tradition too, to say Christ, priest, prophet, and king. Those were the 3, let's say, leaders in the Old Testament. That God appointed. There were priests in the Old Testament. There were prophets, and there were kings, and they were any one of them or all of them being good, holy priests, prophets, and kings. The Israelites were doing well. When one or more of those places roles was corrupt, being done by a corrupt person, those things didn't go real well for the Israelites. So Jesus then combined all 3 of those in himself. So he is because he's God the Son, he's the eternal high priest, as we sometimes call him, and the greatest prophet, and of course got a feast coming up in the Catholic Church in a few weeks, the Feast of Christ the King.
Mm-hmm.
But it's psychic. I'm sure you could arrive at Jesus being the Son of God. Do I believe that he knew everyone's thoughts? Yes, I do. So, and can he enlighten other people? Yeah, I think he's done. I think God did that in the Old Testament with prophets. I think the Holy Spirit continues to do that occasionally with great saints. I'm weary about when Jesus healed, and when I see other, in the history of the church, saints trying to do healings, they usually try to keep it quiet. If you read in the Gospels, Jesus tried to pull the person aside after a while. The crowd got too big and he couldn't. But he usually tried to do it more quietly than that. I'm very, it's a red flag for me when someone's doing it and trying to get attention by it when...
Me too.
Yeah. There's a lot of those.
As opposed to trying to avoid attention.
I agree 1,000%.
Yeah.
I really do. Because there's a lot of people in my line of work that make it really hard on the rest of us that are coming from a heart place and a genuine intuitive place to uplift and help other people, help themselves. So when you see a bunch of the ones that are standing on soapboxes doing and saying what they're doing and saying, it does make it hard on the rest of us who are trying to come from love.
Here, like to give an example, a related example, I remember shortly after I was ordained, met a guy who had nearly died, and talking to him later, and his wife was there, and he said, "Well, my wife's the only one that knows." He said, "Father, sure as I see the two that you stand there, I saw an angel." And right, and shortly after I was supposed to have died and whatever. He wasn't going around telling people. Not that would inherently have been bad. It just, for me personally, that lent more belief. Wow, this guy is clearly not trying to get attention. He's telling his wife and his priest, the only ones, that he was convinced he'd seen an angel and that this was not, his time to die, and that angel had been there to save him. So I get it when someone like that wants to proclaim that to the world. I get that, and yet it just, for me, it's a little bit of it was more impact when I heard it from this guy who wasn't telling anyone.
Oh, of course. Well, and what I want to add to that, Father Mike, is I feel on an intuitive level, meaning from a heart level, you can tell the difference when someone is coming from a pure essence or that of Christ energy and when they're not, right?
I think that's tricky. St. Paul mentioned that even the devil appears an angel of light, so I think we have to be cautious of that.
Yeah, well, and I agree. And what I'm saying is you could feel the difference when you were communicating with this particular person.
Oh, I thought so, but I could be mistaken. I see what you're asking. I'm not saying I was 100% certain. No, it's just that one struck me as more believable, and because it was a humble, calm, whatever. But I could be, I could be mistaken. So I see what you're saying. You actually earlier on you said not 100%. So we agree on that, right?
Yeah. I mean, what human is 100% anything?
Well,
That's why we're human.
Yeah, and back to exorcism. Some exorcists, certainly not all, but some like to have a person there who they believe has some gift of the Holy Spirit, of discerning spirits, which. Again, a few saints have had that, where it seems that they were accurately able to, determine just, this person has a demon or whatever.
Right.
So some exorcists rely on a person like that, but they've told me, they said, well, I don't rely on that completely. That's one more piece of evidence. But other exorcists say, nope, the rite doesn't mention that, so I don't go with that. The rite doesn't forbid it either. It's an open, it's open to the discretion of the exorcist. When I say the rite, I mean the RITE, the ritual of exorcism.
Okay.
Does not mention depending on any gift like that, but also doesn't forbid depending on a gift like that. So that's a little bit open to the discretion of the exorcist, and some. Again, you might be calling that person a psychic. We wouldn't use that term in Catholic.
Oh no.
Catholic terms, because it would sound like the street corner one up, literally three blocks from me. That's charging.
And I think there's totally different terminology.
But I know it doesn't sound like that's your definition of it, so I don't mean to be imposing that.
No, not at all.
No, we don't feel like you're opposing anything.
No, this is enjoyable. I'm learning a lot from this, and but first we're going to take just a 15-second break just for our sponsor, and so we're not going to we don't want you hanging up on us don't go anywhere.
I'll be here.
Yeah. All right, so this is Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
And we're going to take just a 15-second break for our sponsor. Be right back from Earth-Friendly Products, or maybe even Adventures Unlimited Press. Here we go. Today's show is sponsored by Adventures Unlimited Press. Take your mind on a literary journey and go to adventuresunlimitedpress.com to purchase books from our famed experts featured right here on Truth Be Told. That's adventuresunlimitedpress.com. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Eddie Connor.
And I'm Tony Sweet.
And our guest is the author of Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment. And this is Father Mike Driscoll. He also has another book called The Father Copernica Mysteries, Stories of the Strange and Supernatural.
Welcome back to the show, Father Mike. You there?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, there we go. So we're back, and I want to ask you a question. Now, writing this book, and with the Catholic Church, writing these two books that you wrote, is there some stuff that you could not divulge? And how did you get your books published in the first place? Because is this something kind of a secret to the Catholic Church, or were they okay with you writing the book?
Well, the second, the Father Copernica Mysteries, are that's purely fiction. I had when I was trying to writing on the topic of demons, it can drag you down a little bit.
Right,
So I
right.
take breaks. I take breaks and write these other fun, were fun for me to write. I hope were fun stories, and found a Catholic publisher of fiction who did that one. So 2 different publishers. And then the Demons Deliverance and Discernment book found a publisher called Catholic Answers that they try and explain different aspects of the faith, and this is an aspect they had not had a book on, so they were willing to go for it. I'm sorry, I think I lost track of your question there.
No,
though.
that's what I was. And from so that to the second part of that is how did you get this published? Was the Catholic Church okay with it, or they were like, we don't want to divulge certain information that is sacred to the church?
Right. I don't know if in the past, I think that's maybe gone up and down. Like I said, in the Middle Ages, there was a time when it was way too, got a little bit crazy, so the church had to rein it in, and then there might have been a time where it was almost kind of made too secretive in some ways, or just the 60s were a lot of change in society, a lot of change in the church, and there was kind of among some, certainly not the church as a whole, the ritual is still there, but among some of the church, we're too modern for that, we don't believe in that. Well, church always, still, now church believes possession can happen. Hey, a Catholic can say, I don't think it's happened in 1,000 years, and the church doesn't make a comment on how often it is.
Right.
It's not an infallible statement when an exorcist says, hey, I think this person is possessed, and the bishop approves and he does it. That's not infallible. As you were just saying earlier, the bishop could ask any bishop or exorcist, they could say, hey, I could be wrong. It sure looked unnatural to me, and it sure seemed to work when we did the right. That's the best we can do. But no, there's nothing too secretive. I've not seen a document, but every exorcist I talk to said, absolutely, they're forbidden to take videotapes of it, which I think in the age of YouTube is a very good idea, because somehow, somewhere, that video would get out, and then we'd be back to trying to do a circus atmosphere.
Right,
Whereas I've been told by exorcists they do sometimes audio tapes for their own, at least a couple exorcists said that, just for their own study purposes, that they can remind them of how it went and what was helpful and what might not have been. But no videotapes, which I think is great. Like I said, somehow that would get out there, and
I'm sure,
we'd be back to trying to do certain, yeah.
Nowadays, especially. Is it true that The Exorcist, the movie with Linda Blair, is it true that it was based on a story about a young boy whom the Catholic Church was doing an exorcism on, and then they took that little bit of truth and then they blew it up into this big sensational movie?
I've read different versions of that. I've read different versions, the true story on that. Someone wrote a neat book claiming I lost track of a couple of names of these books and authors, but someone claimed to have gotten hold of the diary of one of the priests involved, and it seemed that seemed pretty realistic. That does seem to have been on a case of a young boy who. In the movie, she found a Ouija board in the house they had moved into. In real life, the boy supposedly, his aunt used to play with a Ouija board with him, like a 10-year-old boy or something, kind of like the age of the girl in the movie. I'll mention something in that movie that is accurate. I read you the 3 signs of exorcism.
Yeah.
If you remember the movie at all, I've seen it probably more times than I should have. It's a good study, and good to know what people are seeing, so you can answer, like this when people ask about it, which they do. It seemed to me they were careful in the movie to include all 3 of the signs. She spoke in Latin, and she should not have known Latin. She knew when the exorcist's mother had died. There's no way she should have known that. And and we've got our favorite, of course. Display of powers beyond the subject's age and natural condition. Most people do not spin their head around as Linda Blair did. So there was that sign too. So that one was more. She did levitate too. So the first 2 signs were pretty, the kind of thing that an exorcist would look for. They speak a language they don't know, and they knew something about my past or something like my family they shouldn't have known. The 3rd sign they went over the top with her spinning her head around. And for some reason, the movie, I guess because it's exciting in a movie, that movie, and also that one, The Rice, with Anthony Hopkins.
Right. Oh, yeah.
In both of those movies, in the course of the exorcism, the demon jumped and possessed the exorcist. I've heard no exorcist I talked to has had that happen, has ever heard of it happen, thinks it ever would happen. So that, I think, is purely to make the movie exciting. Exorcist should be, as the Rice says, the bishop should pick a priest who, as far as I'm quoting right here, the exorcist must be properly distinguished for his piety, prudence, integrity of life, humility, utterly immune to any striving for human aggrandizement. So the bishop wants to pick a really good, humble priest, as far as he can know that this is a good, humble priest, because I don't think the demon's going to jump into him if it turns out, but he's probably might not be very effective if he's actually got some serious sin going on in his life. And it's going to get worse if he's dealing with a demon, I would presume.
Right.
So it's less of the dramatic danger and more of the subtle dangers to his soul. Nothing dramatic like jumping into him, though I've never heard of myself or heard of any exorcist who has heard of that happening. Makes for a good movie, so.
It does make for a great movie. I had nightmares for years.
Danger. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you said you have not performed an exorcism, but you've assisted. In the ones that you assisted, what did you observe, or what did you do to partake in the exorcism?
There were a couple different ones. I was there a few times. The exorcist usually has if he can, he'll have another priest there to assist and answer the prayers if I was, and to pray with them, and a couple of other people there too to pray. Mm-hmm. This gets tricky, but even the rite of exorcism says about restraining the person. Not that you're not going to do anything brutal, but if they're kind of thrashing, you might kind of the same thing we do in the hospitals. You might have a couple of nurses there trying to hold someone if they're getting kind of don't seem to be in the right mind.
Right.
I saw reactions to prayers and holy water and things like that. I think the ones that I saw were people who thought they had some kind of demonic attack. I think they were sincere, but I think they were sincerely mistaken. Demons can do some, as we would expect. They're just really, I'm going to use an off-color word there, but they're really bad. And so, like spitting and vomiting, that alone isn't a sign, but that can go along with it, because demons are just things that are good they don't like, and things that are disgusting they do like.
Mm-hmm.
So you might see some of that too. I saw people, the ones I saw were some screaming, shouting back, kind of like doing some spasms when holy water and things were used, but none of it looked to me like it was unnatural, the ones that I saw.
Do you find that the people who were genuinely possessed, do you find that there's a certain demographic for the prime target for somebody who is possessed? Meaning, is it mostly elderly? Is it mostly children? Is it mostly girls? Is it mostly boys?
And that's what I was going to say, because you said out of that 1,000, there was only a few. What was the similarities with those few 2 or 3 people?
I've not heard of, other than one exorcist saying that more women than men, but he thought that was purely because women might be more likely to go for help, whereas the guy might not. He didn't think a woman was any more likely to be possessed. He thought it was just a matter of a woman more likely to look for help than a guy. So, no, I would love to do, but I think it's kind of impossible. I'd love to do more of a study on a follow-up study. Hey, how, the kind of thing you try and do. It's hard in psychology too, and counseling to do these follow-up studies. For 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and find that 100 people have had actual approved exorcisms done by a Catholic exorcist, and what is their status then mentally and spiritually. But I don't think I'm ever going to attempt that, because we deliberately try not to keep records. That they're encouraged to follow up with the exorcist for most exorcists say, I want to hear from them. And I tell them, stay in touch with me for the next month or year, just for their own mental and spiritual health. To be talking to the exorcist. But because there are no studies quite like that, I don't know any demographics. Now, I will say certain countries seem more open to believing in spirit possession and exorcism. Does that mean they're actually getting more people possessed, or does that mean they got more people who think they're possessed? So we're back to that question. I'm half Italian. My mom's right near me here. And in Italy, there's more of a belief in spiritual, more people, although that may have changed in recent decades, but certainly there had been a stronger belief there. And in some places, let's say like England, where a little bit less, what would we say, a little bit less emotion we don't think of the English as emotion as the Italians. I guess coming from someone who's half Italian, I guess. I don't know.
That is funny. That makes me cut to the movie Saturday Night Fever with John Travolta. I was sitting in that movie theater with my mom watching the scene where John Travolta's character is sitting at this huge Italian dining room table. They're all yelling over top of each other, and they're hitting each other, and they're speaking really loud back to their parents. And my mom looked at me. She said, "I would beat you within an inch of your life." So whenever you talk about, the Irish or the English people, that would be a totally different scene if it was a bunch of English people. Anyway, I'm sorry. That made me think of that. And I was like, because they were acting like they were possessed.
All right, so before we let you go, we have just a few more minutes. Before we let you go, is there any other books on the horizon? Are we looking at another?
Yeah, fiction or nonfiction.
Yeah. Oh, at some point, I've got a few stories for the follow for the Father Kopanica, which you mentioned there about Alice Cooper. See, it shows what the bad influence of Alice Cooper. I still, despite I don't listen to pop music and stuff, but I still like to hear old Alice Cooper songs occasionally. So you see the bad influence that he has, and it was fun to write some kind of creepy, weird. I guess it was like an X-File. They were like X-File stories. So yeah, I'd like to do a few more of those. Do another book of those, and I'd like to maybe write more on mental health. If I do another book, maybe something mental health and spirituality. Although I might be doing a small book on angels and demons. So just kind of, it would be some of the same in this book, but more beginning from the point of demons are fallen angels. What are angels and what are their powers? That'd be nice to write about that. So something more about angels first before getting into what are devils.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, one of our friends is a psychologist, and of course she doesn't, divulge names or nothing, but she was talking about one of her clients that they were doing kind of a meditation and not necessarily hypnosis, but the client actually went into kind of a state where she became someone else, kind of like the split personality, but she started speaking a language that nobody knew what it was, and then until she kind of did some research and found it was some kind of old Native American or some type of language. When you hear something like that as somebody dealing with exorcism, possessions, what would that bring an attention to you if a psychologist came to you and said they're speaking a language I don't know and nobody else seems to know what it is,
and they don't know
either? What would you say to that?
And if it turned out, first you'd want to verify if it is an actual language or if it's just,
like babble.
A babbling.
Yeah.
If it turned out, like you said, in this case, it turned out to be an actual language. That's interesting. If I sounded like I think I know all the answers, this is the point to end where I don't. There are things unknown out there that I just, I say, boy, I don't know what to think about that. So I try not to jump. Like I was mentioning with people with, who seem to be schizophrenic and seem to be seeing demons, I'm not going to jump too quickly to say they are or are not. So good to try and end on a humble note. If I sounded like I'm a guy with all the answers, I don't want to sound that way.
Well, then what are you here for? No, just kidding.
A few answers, maybe.
Yeah, but I think you're coming from a wonderful place, and we like how sincere you are. I have one last question.
Thanks.
I have one last question for you, Father Mike, and you probably won't be able to answer it because it's a little sort of off the cuff, but in the political arena right now in the United States, Republican or Democrat, is there anybody that you see standing up there that's the equivalent of your Alice Cooper?
I thought you were going to ask me if any of them were possessed.
Oh, that too. That was my question.
I know two of them.
For any of them. Oh, the older I get, the less. As far as politics, they're fallen human beings too. So I don't know. We pray for our country and hope for the best. There's some I like, I guess, and I know they're all going to be flawed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No matter who it is.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. And meanwhile, we can send everybody over to peterinchains.com, right?
Right. There's a neat incident in the New Testament in the Acts of the Apostles where Peter is in chains, and an angel comes and taps him, and the chains fall off, and it's a neat incident. And there's actually a feast day in the old calendar of the Catholic Church. August 1st is called the Feast of Peter in Chains. So I like that incident, so that's why I named the website Peter in Chains. about an angel rather than a devil. How's that?
That's nice.
God sent an angel to free Peter from his chains.
All right, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment. And what's the other book, Eddie?
The other book is The Father Copernica Mysteries, which are stories of the strange and supernatural. And don't be afraid, everybody, it's not about the 2016 election.
That's right.
That's right.
All right, thank you so much, Father Mike. We really appreciate
Thank you
being
so much.
here.
It's great talking to you.
And
Thank
please
you.
come back soon. We'd love to have you back.
Oh, give me a call. I would be glad to talk again. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yay, thanks.
All right, talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Well, Eddie, as a psychic, I'm really curious on your thoughts on the priest, Catholic Church, and their belief in the psychic realm and mediums and stuff.
I think, from my own personal opinion and
Right.
perspective, most churches
Right.
don't like the word psychic. They don't
Right.
like what we do.
Right.
And there's a lot of judgment about it. And for some reason, most of them think it's a bad thing.
And it can be some.
Of course.
As we've talked many times on here, there's a lot of psychics out there that are not doing it for the right intentions.
That's right. And there's a lot of priests who aren't doing that for the right intentions.
this is
And
right.
a lot of
This is true.
CPAs that aren't doing it for the right.
And
So there's
political and blah, blah,
Oh,
blah,
of
blah,
course.
blah, blah.
There's always, there's always a rotten apple in the bunch.
Right.
I
That's
think.
true.
So I liked what Teresa said about it. She's like, she doesn't care what the priest or the church thinks of her. She goes there to get her heart filled back up with God. And I believe that's the ultimate path, to be
Right.
honest with you. So I grew up Southern Baptist, Presbyterian, Methodist.
Oh my God!
Baptist. Yeah, meaning
Jumped around.
that was all like part of the stuff that we grew up around.
Right.
And because Mama, her parents made them go to church. She did not. It was rammed down her throat, and she purposefully.
didn't do that to you?
No,
Yeah.
because of that.
I think that's why my parents didn't do it to me either.
Yeah,
Because
and
they had to.
she set it up where we went to Sunday school and big church. It might have been 6 months or a year, but if we didn't want to go that Sunday morning, we didn't have to go. If it spoke to us, she supported it 1,000,000%. If it didn't speak to us, it didn't speak to us. So she let us make the decision about
Right.
that because of how back-asswards her childhood was.
And this goes back to what we were talking about. The possession and exorcism. I found it very fascinating that the one priest said that out of 1,000 people that came to, and that's just one priest,
Yeah.
that came to him saying, I'm possessed, there's only 2 or 3 that they, I guess, would say certified that it was possession. So just think of the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people out there that believe that they're possessed. And I've heard that from people and my own friends, like, I feel possessed, maybe jokingly, maybe serious, but I think sometimes we all feel that way. At one time or another in our life.
Yeah,
So,
well, I think more people are hurting now than they've ever hurt before. Well, now that's not necessarily true than ever before, but I think a lot of people are hurting now. And I personally believe this. I learned firsthand that my connection to God had nothing to do with brick and mortar and a roof and a cement parking lot.
right.
Well,
Right.
and back in my day, a dirt parking lot. I don't think it has anything to do with one person who went to school to tell me what to think and not to think standing in a pulpit.
Right.
I just don't. I feel and know in my heart of heart that for me personally, God is everywhere. And when I'm out in nature, I am filled up with that essence. When I'm having certain conversations, I'm filled up with that essence. And we don't have to go somewhere to get it. We don't have to listen to somebody to get it. It's innately in all of us. I think we're all striving to be Christ consciousness. Every single human, whether you're an atheist or whether you're a Christian.
I think that is a perfect place to end, because I think our time is up for this broadcast. But we want to thank Father Mike Driscoll, and make sure you go to his website again is
PeterInChains.com. Also, check out his books, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment. And he also has a fiction book called The Father Copernica Mysteries, which are stories of the strange and supernatural. He was a great guest.
No, he was a great guest,
and honest,
I've learned a
we
lot.
love that.
Yeah, so make sure if you want to follow us on Twitter, go to On Air with Tony, On Air with Tony Tweet on Facebook. You can always go and join our newsletter at truthbetoldwebtv.com. Find out all of our upcoming guests. We'd love to have you join the newsletter. We're going to start giving away prizes and to some of our followers. And we have some great shows coming up this month and next, so I think you want to tune in. You can check us out on iHeartRadio. Yes, iHeartRadio. That's what I said. iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and here on UBN Radio. So thank you, guys. This is Truth Be Told. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back with another episode right after this break. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
Here we go.